So my name is Paulina Kramarz and I work at Jagiellonian University, Institute of Environmental Sciences. And I'm entomologist, and I can say that I'm also ecologist. And now I mostly devoted my time to popularization of science, especially in the context of food production, that is agriculture. I am also part of collective of scientists, Science for Nature, Nauka dla Przyrody. So first of all, I have to clear that it's not like we cannot blame all types of agriculture for influence of the climate change and species extinction. And the main problem is industrialization of the food production. And it involves, for example, the application of chemical fertilizers, also chemicals used for protection of crops, so-called pesticides, and also excessive mechanization of food production, and long-distance transportation. And this industrial agriculture is based on large-scale monocultures, as well as concentrated animal husbandry in so-called industrial, we can call it industrial farms. And one of the main problems with industrial agriculture is that it separates plant cultivation, like crop, from animal husbandry. And for example, feed for animals which are raised in Europe is produced in Southern America, so it's transported for long distance. And in addition, it's another problem with this system of food is that almost 80% of agricultural land is devoted to animal husbandry, either pasture or crop which are used for feed. Yes, and at the same time we have to remember that so-called animal products like milk, eggs, or meat provide only 70% of humans' energy need. So it's kind of very small amount here of energies from, we can say, animals. And because of this, the agriculture, mostly this industrial agriculture, is responsible for 80% of deforestation. And it led to big changes in many ecosystems, like, for example, in Amazon region. So now Amazon forest produce more carbon dioxide than it absorbs. Yeah, so it's a very big problem. And at the same time, together with this deforestation, industrial agriculture, or agriculture in general, is responsible for emission around, or even according to some data, more than 30% of greenhouse gases. So it's really great amount. And it includes not only carbon dioxide, but mostly methane, which comes from animal husbandry, and mainly is produced by ruminants, so such species like cows and sheep. And another very powerful greenhouse gas is nitrous oxide, and it comes from fertilizers as well as from animal feces and urine. And what is the most paradoxical with this industrial agriculture is that it provides only food for only 30% of human population, mostly living in the global north, but it uses around 70% of resources, including land and fresh water. To summarize, the impact of agriculture on our Earth is we can say that it has two components: the devastation of nature and emission of greenhouse gases. So I think that we can see this year how rising temperature can impact even Europe. So we have massive drought in many countries, including Spain, Germany, France, but we can also observe drought in Poland. So this drought in Poland is for we observe it for last 6 years, like every year, and this is phenomenon which used to occur in the past, like every 5 years. So it's really intense. And rising temperature causes not only drought, lack of water, but also can have a negative impact on our crops. For example, it seems to be too hot, and it can be in the future, quite near future, too hot and too dry for potatoes. Yeah, so kind of very common crop in Poland. And at the same time, this rising temperature can cause heat shock in animals, in livestock. So when they produce produce less eggs, less milk, and the gain of their mass is also lowered. And the change of climate caused by rising temperature also led to increasing numbers of windstorms, torrential rains, and many others which can directly damage the crops. Yeah, so we are not able then to grow, and it's difficult to collect them. And we can say that especially vulnerable for such phenomenon are these large scales monoculture, because they are lacking bulks, shelter bags, simply the strips of plants, which minimize or mitigate impacts of such phenomena. And so far in Poland, but also in Europe, we don't have major problems with food production, and it is quite simply visible on the amount of food wastes. Yeah, so in Poland, at the level of consumers, almost 60% of food is throw away. Yeah? So it's really a lot. But with increasing industrialization of agriculture, and it means, as I mentioned before, using artificial fertilizers and pesticides, we can have increasing problem with food production, because these chemicals are toxic for soil. Yeah, because in the agriculture and I think in the environment in general, the most important component is soil. And they are toxic because they are toxic for microorganisms. So microorganisms which are involved in, we can say, in formation of the soil. So it causes lowered level of organic component of the soil, and it means that soil which is depleted with this organic component is less able to store the water. Yeah, so it can really increase the problems with drought. And so we can say that the main problem nowadays with agriculture is simply industrialization. Yeah, so. So I think that the first step is just to stop industrialization of food production. Is the most important, and the second is to decrease number of livestock. Yeah, so it's two processes we have to start with, especially keeping in mind that this industrial agriculture, as well as let's say products from animals, they don't provide enough food for all population of Homo sapiens. And we have to change agriculture to be more local and seasonal. So only with these two components, seasonality and locality, we can reduce transportation, for example. We can help to reduce number of livestock as well. And so with this two reduction, once we can reduce the amount of greenhouse gases emitted from agriculture, but we can also free up vast area for nature. Yeah. So this locality and seasonality is part of well-developed and proved system called agroecology, which consists both of good practices in agriculture as well as the social aspects. So agroecology is a well-developed and proved system of food production, and it is based on organic farming, which includes return to connection between animal husbandry and crops. And in this system, animals are fed with plants which are not which humans cannot digest, for example, with restovers from our crops, with rest from our food. And they in this system they also produce high quality of fertilizers, that is manure, which consists of feces and urine of animals. And we can say that this system of food production should resemble as much as possible what is going on in natural ecosystems. Yeah? So when everything is connected, and the very important component, as I mentioned before, is soil. And this soil, we can say, is produced by plants, animals, and microorganisms cooperating together. And in agriculture, food is produced seasonally and locally. And it has also very important social components, which is based on communities, but not only rural communities, but also including people who only, we can say, consume food. Most and more popular in Poland is so-called agroforestry, or they call it also silvopastoral system. And in this system, it's really mimicked natural ecosystems, because in this system, animal husbandry or crops or both are connected with trees. Yeah, so this area are covered with trees, which provide, for example, shelter for animals, and at the same time, the system is able to accumulate the carbon dioxide, what is very important nowadays from the point of view of climate change. And I can say that kind of the most important point is to really return to local and seasonal food, because it reduces, for example, transportation for long distance. And still we have to remember that for the transport is fueled still by fossil fuels. And it also reduced the area for animal husbandry, so we can give back the vast area to nature. And with this organic farming, agroecology, and local and seasonal food, we can save also a lot of resources of our planet, because then we don't need to produce artificial fertilizers, and we don't need to produce pesticides, and both are produced with using energy still from fossil fuels. And at the same time, we don't need to dig up for resources to produce these fertilizers and pesticides. And from kind of the economical point of view, and also safety of food production, what is important with this way of producing food is either equally efficient or even more efficient than this industrial agriculture.